Welcome, and thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something that touches pretty much everyone who spends time online, the digital marketing ecosystem.
Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it?
It really is. Our source for this exploration is a detailed presentation. Comes straight from someone with, 2 decades navigating these waters.
That's right. And we're taking that expertise and using it as our map, really, to understand this incredibly complex and, fast-moving landscape.
Okay.
We'll be digging into who the major players are, how the technology works under the surface, why regulations like RGPD matter.
Oh, yeah, the regulations.
And ultimately, how the money actually flows through this whole system. The goal isn't just to list components, but to show you how they fit together.
Right. What it means for the digital world you actually interact with every day.
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's easy to see the ads, right? But understanding the engine behind them, the sheer scale, the automation, the data, that's where the real insights are hiding, I think.
Right.
Let's unpack this.
Okay, so starting with the big picture from the source material, who are the essential participants?
The main groups.
Yeah, think of it like a marketplace with several key roles. First, you have the annonceurs or brands.
Okay.
These are the companies who have something to sell or, a message to share and want to reach people online.
So like a retailer or a car company wanting to advertise their new model or something?
Exactly that. Then you have the agencies, media agencies.
Right.
They act on behalf of the brands, advising them on strategy and actually buying the ad space for them.
Got it. The buyers.
Kind of, yeah. Next, you have the technologies and Regis Pub. These are all the various platforms, tools, intermediaries, the plumbing, if you will.
The tech bits in the middle.
That make the buying and selling of ads possible. And finally, you have the medias or editors, publishers.
The websites, the apps?
Exactly. The platforms that actually host the content people consume and therefore have the audience that brands want to reach.
So, okay, let me see if I've got this. The brands want the audience. The media editors have the audience.
Right.
The agencies help the brands find the right audience on those sites.
Mm-hmm.
And the technologies are what makes the connection happen.
Sort of. That's a pretty good way to simplify it, yeah. The source also clarifies that online, you essentially have 2 main types of sites playing these roles.
Okay.
An annonceur site, an advertiser site, is focused on selling its own product or service, like an e-commerce store.
Makes sense. They make money from customers.
Directly from customers, yeah. An editor site, a publisher site, on the other hand, is primarily providing content, think like a news website or a blog.
Gotcha.
They make money mainly by showing ads to their audience.
Ah, okay. So for those editor sites, the publishers, the ones relying on ads, how do they actually get paid by those brands? What's the mechanism?
Well, the sources highlight that there are really 3 fundamental models for making revenue online.
3 main ways.
Yeah, selling products, right? E-commerce and marketplace.
Okay.
Charging for access subscription.
Paywalls. Yeah.
And the one we're focusing on here, advertising.
Right.
And when it comes to advertising, the payment models are typically tied to different actions a user might take with the ad.
Okay, like what?
Well, you've got CPM. That stands for cost per mil or per 1,000 impressions.
1,000. Okay.
So here, the advertiser pays the publisher for every 1,000 times their ad is seen. Just displayed. Doesn't matter if you click.
Just eyeballs on the page.
Exactly. The source gives an example. Say a €2 CPM. If you show the ad 2 million times, you'd pay €4,000. It's all about getting the message out there, visibility.
Okay, CPM. What else?
Then there's CPC, cost per click.
That sounds straightforward.
It is. Here, the advertiser only pays when someone actually clicks on the ad. They get sent to the brand's website, maybe.
So you pay for traffic.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
An example is, say, 0.5 euros per click. If you get 2,000 clicks, that costs €1,000. More about driving engagement or visits.
Makes sense. CPM for views, CPC for clicks. Is there a third?
Yep, CPA, cost per action, or sometimes cost per acquisition.
Action. Like what kind of action?
This is the most results-oriented one. The advertiser pays only when a specific desired action happens after the click. Usually that means a sale on the site.
Ah, so they only pay if they actually make money from the ad.
Basically, yeah. Or achieve some other goal, like a sign-up. It could be a fixed amount per sale, like the source says €5 for each sale, so 500 sales costs €2,500.
Okay.
Or it could be a percentage of the revenue from that sale, like 5% of whatever the customer spent. So 5% of €5,000 revenue is €250 cost.
Wow, okay. So that's very tied to the outcome.
Very much so. It's about measurable results.
That makes a lot of sense. So publishers use these models, CPM, CPC, CPA, to make money from their audience. And brands choose them based on their goals,
Right.
like just getting seen, getting clicks, or getting actual sales.
Precisely. And the sources also mention the 3 main strategic goals for brands using digital marketing in the first place.
Oh yeah, what are those?
They frame it as 3 pillars, from the brand's perspective. Acquisition, which is all about attracting new qualified visitors, getting potential customers in the door.
Right, finding new people.
Then conversion.
Yeah.
That's about optimizing their website, the user experience, basically turning those visitors into paying customers or getting them to do whatever the desired action is.
Making the sale, essentially.
Or getting the lead, yeah. And the third is fidelization, loyalty.
Keeping customers.
Exactly. Focused on retaining existing customers, encouraging repeat business, and increasing their lifetime value, making them worth more over time.
Gotcha. Acquisition, conversion, loyalty.
Yeah.
And those goals would then drive which ad models they pick, I guess.
Absolutely. They often dictate the whole strategy.
Okay, that gives us a really good framework. Now, to really grasp the sheer scale of this ecosystem, the sources lay out some incredible numbers.
Yeah.
Especially looking at the French market as a kind of case study.
They really do. It puts things into perspective. I mean, when you consider there are 68 million people in France,
Right.
and 55 million of them are internet users, that's most people. And get this, 47 million go online daily.
Wow. Every single day?
Every day. 92.5% of households connected. And people spending, on average, 2 hours and 30 minutes online per day.
2.5 hours a day?
Right.
That's a huge chunk of someone's waking time.
It is. It's a fundamental shift in how people spend their time, consume information, get entertained.
And where advertisers can reach them.
Exactly. And a significant part of that online time involves shopping. E-commerce alone in France hit 150 billion euros in 2023.
150 billion.
Just e-commerce.
Just e-commerce, with 42 million people buying online. And what's really key here, as the source points out, this isn't some niche thing anymore.
No.
It represents 12.4% of the total retail market in France.
Wow, over a tenth of all retail spending is now online. That's massive.
It's a major economic force, no question.
And when you look at who dominates this online world, the sources point fingers, right? At the giants of the web.
We do. They use the common acronyms like GAFAM in the West, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft.
Right. And Netflix, Airbnb, Tesla, Uber, and then BTX in Asia, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, Xiaomi.
The big players.
The really big players. The numbers showing their dominance are just staggering. Their combined market cap is estimated around $5,000 billion.
5,000 billion.
Yeah. Which, the source notes, is 2.5 times the value of the entire top 40 French companies combined.
That comparison really hammers it home, the sheer concentration of power.
It does. And the source attributes the scale not just to being big, but to their relentless focus on 4 things: growth, accumulating cash, driving innovation, and crucially, leveraging data.
Data is the key.
Seems to be. And the source material also has that really compelling graphic, the one showing how fast technology is adopted now compared to the past.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. How long it took radio versus, like, apps.
Exactly. It shows radio took decades to reach 50 million users. Television took years. But newer tech, like certain apps or social platforms, they hit that same 50 million milestone in just months, sometimes even weeks.
Crazy acceleration.
It just hammers home that this ecosystem isn't just large, it's moving and changing at an unprecedented speed.
Okay, so massive scale, accelerating speed, concentrated power.
Yeah. And with that kind of growth and dominance, it's probably no surprise that regulators have started paying closer attention.
Right.
The sources dedicate a good chunk of time to the impact of regulations like the RGPD and the DMA.
Ah, the RGPD, or GDPR in English, right? The reason for all those cookie banners we click on constantly.
That's the one. The source highlights the key dates. It came into force in 2016, but really became applicable across Europe in May 2018.
And it changed things fundamentally.
Absolutely. It fundamentally shifted how personal data could be handled. Everything centers around consent.
What does that mean, like true consent?
Well, the sources define it quite clearly under RGPD. Consent has to be informed, you know what you're agreeing to. It has to be freely given, no coercion. It has to be specific to the purpose. And, crucially, you must be able to easily withdraw it later.
So no more hiding it in fine print. It needs to be a clear, active agreement.
Exactly. And it also gave individuals, us new rights over our data.
Like what?
Like the right to transparency, knowing what data is collected,
Yeah.
the right to rectify incorrect data, the right to erasure the famous right to be forgotten, and the right to object to certain kinds of processing.
Okay, more power to the user.
Definitely. And for companies, it introduced major responsibilities. Things like transparency in how they process data, accountability for handling it safely, robust security measures.
Sounds like a lot of work for them.
It is. Mapping where data flows, cooperating with authorities, providing users with ways to complain or seek recourse. It's significant.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the sources also frame RGPD not just as a constraint or a compliance headache,
Oh, how else?
potentially as an opportunity.
An opportunity, how?
Well, by being transparent and giving users real control, companies can actually use it to stand out, to build trust, to align with, corporate social responsibility values.
Okay. Like showing respect for privacy.
Exactly. And even re-engage users on a better footing. It encourages a shift towards treating user data more carefully and communicating clearly about it. It's about pedagogy and transparency.
That's right. That's a really different perspective on something often seen just as red tape. Interesting. And then there's the other one you mentioned, the DMA.
Yes, the Digital Markets Act. This is presented as the next major regulation, and it's specifically aimed at those giants of the web we talked about.
The gatekeepers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It targets their position as gatekeepers in the digital economy. The goal is to ensure fairer competition, basically, and prevent them from using their dominance to stifle innovation or unfairly disadvantage smaller players.
Okay, so trying to lever the playing field a bit.
That's the idea behind it, yeah.
All right, so we've got the players, the money models, the huge scale, and the regulations trying to shape it all. Let's get down to what the user actually sees. What kinds of digital ads are actually out there in this ecosystem?
Yeah, the source material makes it really clear this is a market that's constantly inventing new ways to reach you. It's not static at all.
Always evolving.
Totally. It lists a huge variety of formats. You've got the classic banner ads, right, in all shapes and sizes.
Sure, the ones we all know.
Then video ads, playing before content, during, after. Or just appearing in your feed, like outstream video.
Okay.
Formats specifically for mobile, like those full screen ones that pop up, interstitials, or ones that stick to the side.
Yeah, those can be annoying.
They can be. Then native formats build right into social media. Think stories, pins, in-feed ads, link ads.
Right, blending in more.
Exactly. Email marketing, of course. Even audio ads now in things like podcasts or music streaming, pre-rolls.
Hearing those more and more.
And formats that try to look like regular content, like native recommendations you might also like. Or just plain old hyperlinks in search results like Google ads or link building.
Wow. It sounds like basically if there's a screen or speakers involved, there's probably a way to put an ad there.
That's pretty much the reality, yeah.
And regardless of the format, the source simplifies the user's interaction down to just 3 basic things that can happen.
Right. Yeah, they boil it down to 3 potential interactions with any digital ad.
Okay.
1, je peux la voir, I can see it. That creates an ad impression.
Impression.
Got it. 2, je peux être redirigé. I can be redirected. That's it.
Okay.
3, je peux acheter. I can buy. That leads to a sale or a conversion.
See it, click it, buy it. Impression, click, conversion.
Basically, yes.
And those 3 actions tie right back to those payment models we talked about earlier.
Exactly. CPM is paying for the seeing, the impression. CPC is paying for the clicking. And CPA is paying for the buying or the action.
Perfect sense. The economics are directly linked to what the user actually does.
Precisely.
So with all these different formats and these actions happening millions, billions of times, how does this actually happen at that massive scale and speed? The source emphasizes that a huge chunk of this market operates programmatically.
Yes. Programmatic. That's the key word here.
What does that actually mean? This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
It does get technical, but the core idea is simple. Programmatic advertising, as the source defines it, is just the automated buying and selling of ad inventory.
Automated?
Yeah, using technology to connect buyers and sellers directly. Instead of people making phone calls, sending emails, negotiating deals manually, computers are doing the work, often in real time.
Okay, so machines talking to machines to buy and sell ad space.
That's the essence of it.
Yeah.
And the sources state that around 80% of digital advertising is now bought this way. It's the dominant method.
80%. Wow.
Yeah. And they also point out, quite rightly, that some formats like search ads, Google ads and social media ads on platforms like Facebook or Instagram, they are inherently automated platforms.
Right. You use their tools to set up campaigns.
Exactly. So by their very nature, they are effectively 100% programmatic already.
So it's like a giant automated real-time auction house for almost all the ad space online.
That's a really great analogy, actually. Yes. And to run this massive, complex auction, there's a whole network of technology involved. People often call it the ad tech stack.
Ad tech stack.
And the sources help break down some of the key tools and players on both sides of the transaction: the publisher side, who's selling the space,
The seller side.
and the advertiser side, who's buying the space.
The buyer side. Okay, let's start with the publisher, the seller. What tech do they use?
Okay, on the publisher side, a primary tool is the ad server. Think of it like their inventory manager. It decides which ad to actually show on their webpage or app at any given moment, and it measures how many times it's displayed, tracking revenue.
So it serves the ads. Makes sense.
Exactly. Then there's something called yield management technology. This is clever stuff. It helps the publisher figure out the best way to sell their ad space in real time to make the most money.
Like who to sell it to for the highest price.
Yeah, should they sell it through a direct deal they negotiated, or put it into a private auction, or just offer it on the open market? The yield manager helps optimize that decision automatically.
Smart. Okay. What else?
The SSP stands for sell-side platform.
SSP.
This is like the publisher's automated sales agent for the programmatic world. It lists the publisher's available ad space, their inventory, and manages the connections with all the potential buyers and the ad exchanges, the marketplaces.
So the SSP plugs them into the auction.
Pretty much, yeah. Publishers also use audience analytics, of course. Tools like Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics.
To see who's visiting their site.
Exactly. To understand who their visitors are, how they behave, what content they like. This helps them qualify their audience and show advertisers how valuable it might be.
Makes sense. Know your product.
And crucially here, especially for targeting, is the DMP, the data management platform.
Okay, data platform.
This tool collects and organizes all sorts of data about the publisher's audience. It helps them create segments, like sports fans or people interested in cars, to offer to advertisers for targeting.
Oh, so they package up their audience data using a DMP.
That's a big part of its role, yes. So that's kind of the core tech on the publisher-seller side, trying to sell their space effectively.
Okay, got it. Ad server, yield management, SSP, analytics, DMP. Now, what about the other side? The advertisers and agencies, the buyers. What tech are they using?
Okay, on the buyer side, the absolute core tool is the DSP, the demand-side platform.
DSP, okay, demand side. Opposite of sell side.
Exactly. This is the agency's or the advertiser's automated buying agent. It connects to all the SSPs and ad exchanges out there. It allows the buyers to bid on ad impressions programmatically based on who they want to reach, their budget, campaign goals, etc.
So the DSP is where they set up their campaigns and tell the system who they're looking for.
Precisely. It's their control panel for buying programmatically. Buyers also use ad servers, just like publishers, but often for different reasons. They use them to manage their creatives, the actual ad images or videos they want to show, and importantly, to track the performance of their campaigns across all the different places they bought ads. It gives them a central view.
Okay, so managing the ads themselves and measuring results.
Yep. And guess what else they use? A DMP.
Another DMP on the buyer side.
Yes. Data management platform again. Agencies might have a DMP that holds aggregated, anonymized data across many different clients, allowing them to build audience segments. Big advertisers might have their own DMP focused on their own customer data, what they call first-party data.
Like data from their own website or loyalty program.
Exactly. And this data, whether it's agency data or advertiser first-party data, is fed into the DSP to make the ad targeting much more specific and hopefully effective.
Got it. Using data to find the right people.
That's the name of the game. There's also technology for dynamic creative optimization, DCO.
DCO, what's that?
This allows the ad itself, the banner, say, to be personalized in real time based on the data known about the user or the context. So you might see an ad for shoes featuring a specific pair you looked at earlier, or an ad for a holiday destination showing the weather forecast for where you are right now.
Wow, okay. Tailoring the ad on the fly.
Exactly. And then there's ad verification tools, really important.
Verification, what are they verifying?
Several things. They check if the ad was actually delivered to a real person, not a bot that's fraud detection. They check if it appeared in a brand-safe environment, not next to inappropriate content. And they check viewability. Was the ad actually visible on the user's screen for a certain amount of time?
Ah, okay. Making sure the ad spend isn't wasted on bots or unseen ads.
That's the goal. And finally, the source mentions optimization layers. These are like extra brains that sit on top of the DSP. They use even more advanced algorithms, often machine learning, to try and make the bidding and buying decisions even smarter and more efficient than the DSP can do on its own.
Good grief. That's a mind-boggling amount of interconnected technology, all talking to each other constantly, just to show one person, one ad.
It truly is a complex machine running behind the scenes. And the sources make it absolutely explicit that historically, this entire automated system, especially all the targeting and personalization capabilities, it's been fundamentally based on one little thing: cookies.
Cookies, those little text files everyone's always talking about and clicking, except for.
Exactly those. The source explains the basic mechanism pretty well. You visit a website, and a tag, a little piece of code on that site, calls a cookie.
Okay.
The cookie itself is just a small file placed on your browser, and it usually just contains a unique ID, like a random number.
So the cookie itself doesn't hold much data?
Not usually, no. It's just the identifier. But here's the thing. That ID is linked to a database profile stored on a server somewhere, maybe owned by an ad tech company.
Huh?
So as you browse around the web, different websites that have tags from that same ad tech company can recognize your cookie ID. They then send information back to that central database, what page you visited, what time, maybe what you clicked on, and it all gets added to the profile associated with your unique cookie ID.
Building up a picture linked to that ID.
Exactly. And it's that profile in the database, linked to the cookie ID, that gets used by the DMPs and DSPs for targeting ads. The source puts it very bluntly. Une industrie basée sur les cookies. An industry built on cookies.
Wow.
And a key technical point, a cookie is tied to a specific domain name. So one website's cookie can't typically be read directly by a totally different website, which is why all these third-party ad tech domains became so important.
Now, that reliance on cookies makes sense now. Given all these layers of tech we just talked about, the DSPs, SSPs, DMPs, verification, all of it, it raises a pretty important question. Where does the advertiser's money actually go?
That's a crucial point, and the sources provide a fascinating, maybe slightly sobering breakdown of the money flow in programmatic advertising.
Okay, lay it on us.
Yeah.
If an advertiser decides to spend, say, €100 on a programmatic campaign, what actually happens to that €100?
Right. Well, according to the picture painted by the sources, a pretty significant slice gets taken by the various parties in the middle before it reaches the publisher. Okay, so starting with that €100 budget. First, about 15% to 20% typically goes to the media agency as commission for their work in planning and managing the campaign.
Okay, agency fees. Makes sense.
Then another chunk, the source suggests 10% to 15%, but notes it can sometimes be double that goes to commissions charged on top by the platforms the agency uses, like fees for using the DSP, fees for the trading desk operators.
The tech platform costs for the buyer side.
Exactly. And then the sources mention roughly another 30% in other commissions and fees distributed across the rest of that ad tech stack we just mapped out.
30% more.
Things like the DMPs, the ad verification tools, those optimization layers, the SSPs on the publisher side, the ad exchanges. Everyone takes a little piece.
Well, so add that up, 15, 20% plus 10, 15% plus 30%. That's a lot.
It is. By the time the money actually reaches the publisher, the website or app owner who actually provided the ad space and the content that attracted the user,
Yeah. How much is left?
they perceive only about €41 out of that initial €100.
Wait, hang on. €41 out of 100. Less than half of the original budget actually ends up with the website owner who showed the ad.
That's what the sources indicate as a typical scenario in a complex, multi-layered programmatic transaction. It is often called the ad tech tax.
Ad tech tax.
They do note this can increase slightly. Maybe the publisher gets €58 if they have more integrated direct sales channels or perhaps run their own ad network more heavily, cutting out some intermediaries.
But still, even €58 means over 40% is going to the tech and agencies in the middle.
It fundamentally shows just how many hands the money passes through in this highly automated process before it reaches the entity creating the content and displaying the ad.
That's a pretty stark illustration of the cost of all that complexity, all that technology and intermediation we just spent time discussing.
It really is. It highlights the value chain or maybe the cost chain involved.
So, Okay, let's try and pull this together. This deep dive into the source material, it really lays bare the incredibly intricate machinery powering so much of the internet economy we all use. We see the key players, the brands, agencies, tech, publishers, and how they interact. We've looked at the fundamental economic models driving revenue, CPM, CPC, CPA.
Yeah, how the money's made.
We've touched on the sheer scale and the accelerating pace of the market, dominated by those huge giants.
And the crucial role of regulations like RGPD and the DMA trying to introduce, some rules of the road into this fast-moving environment.
Right, trying to balance innovation with privacy and fairness.
And underneath it all is that incredibly complex stack of technology, the DSPs, SSPs, DMPs, ad servers, enabling the automated buying and selling.
The programmatic engine.
An engine historically built so heavily on identifiers like cookies, which, as we just saw, results in a money flow, where a significant portion of the advertiser's budget is consumed by the technology and the intermediaries themselves.
So understanding these pieces, the acronyms, the tools, the flow of data, the flow of money, it seems absolutely key if you want to really navigate or even influence this ecosystem.
I think that's right. It's essential knowledge.
It definitely gives you a whole new perspective on those ads you see scrolling through your feed or on a website. You start thinking about the auctions, the data, the tech tax.
It changes how you see it, for sure.
So here's a thought then, for you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive. Given everything we've discussed, given that this intricate system relies so heavily on data and identifiers like cookies, but it faces increasing pressure from privacy regulations like RGPD and technical shifts like the move away from third-party cookies, how might the fundamental mechanics of this programmatic tech stack and that resulting money flow we just talked about be forced to fundamentally adapt, maybe even break and rebuild in the very near future?
That's the big question, isn't it? How does this whole machine evolve?